It was a gray, heavy morning when Thomas Carter found himself sitting alone on the worn wooden bench outside the train station, rain dripping steadily onto his shoulders. The world around him seemed cold and hurried, commuters rushing past, umbrellas bumping against one another, car horns blaring in the distance. He had nowhere to be, no one waiting for him, and nothing left to his name except a tattered coat, a pair of muddy shoes, and memories he wished he could erase. Months earlier, he had never imagined his life would collapse in such a cruel way. A father of 3, Thomas had spent his life sacrificing for his children. He had taken double shifts at the factory, skipped meals to make sure they were fed, and gave up his own dreams so they could chase theirs. When his late wife's family fortune finally came through, a staggering inheritance of $64 million, he thought it was the miracle that would bring them all closer, that would heal the gaps left behind by years of struggle. But wealth has a way of changing people. At first, his children, Michael, the eldest with a sharp tongue and sharper ambition, Anna, the middle child with a knack for charm and persuasion, and little Claire, though not so little anymore, had promised him they'd take care of everything. He wouldn't have to worry about bills, food, or shelter. They said he had done enough for them and now it was their turn. Thomas had believed them, as any father would. But within weeks of the inheritance, his children began to shift. Michael bought a mansion in the hills, filled with glass walls and Italian marble. Anna turned to designer clothing, exclusive vacations, and parties that filled the gossip columns. Claire disappeared into a whirlwind of fast cars and shallow friendships. They became strangers, wrapped in glittering worlds that had no space for the man who had given them everything. It started subtly. A cancelled lunch here, an unanswered call there. Then came the excuses, too busy, too tired, maybe next week. Eventually, when Thomas asked if they could spare some time for him, they grew impatient, irritated, almost resentful. He didn't fit into their new lives. The breaking point came one stormy night. Thomas had shown up at Michael's mansion unannounced, soaked and shivering from the rain, desperate just to see his children, to remind them that he was still here. But instead of warmth, he was met with cold eyes and sharper words. Michael told him he was embarrassing himself, Anna chimed in about how he was clinging, and Claire couldn't even look at him. They told him to go. To leave. That he wasn't needed anymore. So he did. And that was how he found himself living under bridges, in shelters when they weren't full, or simply wandering the streets. He learned how heavy loneliness felt when paired with betrayal. Yet, somehow, he never let bitterness consume him. Each day, he reminded himself that kindness was a choice, and he would not allow their cruelty to strip him of the man he had always been. He shared his meals, when he could find them, with others in need. He helped an elderly woman carry her groceries up 4 flights of stairs, even though his knees ached. He taught a runaway teenager how to read, sitting with her every evening on a park bench under the dim streetlights. The world had turned its back on him, but Thomas refused to turn his back on the world. Months passed like this, slow, cold, and unforgiving. But then, one evening, as he was ladling soup into bowls at a local church kitchen where he volunteered, he saw them. His children. Michael stood awkwardly in a wrinkled suit, Anna's makeup was smeared as though she had been crying, and Claire clutched her jacket tightly as if holding herself together. They looked nothing like the golden heirs they had once been. Their eyes were hollow, their faces pale, their steps hesitant. "Dad," Claire's voice cracked as she said it, the word she had once refused to even acknowledge. Thomas's heart twisted. Part of him wanted to turn away, to make them feel the sting of rejection as he had felt. But another part, the bigger part, the father inside him, knew he couldn't. He set down the ladle, wiped his hands, and faced them. "What happened?" His tone was calm, though inside his chest, a storm raged. Michael swallowed hard, shame softening his usually sharp features. "We lost it all, Dad. Every cent. Bad investments, greed, people who saw us coming and took advantage. We thought we were untouchable. We were wrong. Anna broke then, sobbing into her hands. We didn't just lose the money. We lost friends, homes, everything. No one answers our calls anymore. No one cares. Except you. The silence that followed was heavier than the rain Thomas had once been abandoned in. He looked at them, his children, once blinded by wealth, now stripped bare by life. They had left him in the gutter, but here they were, crawling back, broken and seeking the warmth only a father could give. He could have told them no. He could have reminded them of that night, of their words, of how cold the rain had felt on his skin as they shut the door in his face. But instead, he stepped forward and placed a hand on Anna's shoulder, then Michael's, then Claire's. You made mistakes, he said softly, but so did I. I thought money would bring us together, when really, it pulled us apart. I never wanted your wealth. I only wanted your time, your love, your presence. If you're willing to start over, then so am I. Tears flowed freely now, theirs and his. For the first time in months, maybe years, they embraced, not as heirs, not as fallen millionaires, but as family. The journey ahead wouldn't be easy. They had no fortune to fall back on, no glamorous friends to lean on. But as they began to rebuild, not with money, but with trust, with kindness, with simple acts of humanity, they discovered something more valuable than $64 million. They discovered each other. And Thomas, though scarred by their betrayal, knew in that moment that love was stronger than greed, forgiveness more powerful than bitterness, and the power of humanity far richer than gold. The rain still fell outside, but this time, Thomas wasn't alone in it. He walked out of the shelter with his children by his side, their arms linked, their steps steady. The storm had passed, and for the first time in a long time, the sun began to break through.